Hello, my name is Abigail Canright. I'm a graduate student at Morningside University, and I'm currently a behavior disorder special education teacher at Keystone Academy, which is located in Davenport, Iowa. The title of my research study is The Effects of a Token Economy System and Corrective Teaching to Improve Social Skills and Academic Learning of Students with Behavior Disorders. The problem of my study focuses primarily on how behavior interferes with student learning and academic achievement. Some of these behaviors include hyperactivity and inability to stay on task, which results in more severe behaviors and deficits in learning. This is where the token economy system and corrective teaching model come into play. A token economy system is when students receive any reinforcement that symbolizes a token exchangeable for a reward that is valuable to the student. The corrective teaching model is an 8-step model that addresses inappropriate behaviors and incorporates an alternative behavior to be used in its place. Our building specifically uses the behavior management system called Boys Town Management System. It is a token economy management system that pairs with the corrective teaching model. I chose this topic because our building specifically focuses on students with challenging behaviors. Our building uses the Boys Town system, and I've always just wondered how effective the corrective teaching piece was in accompaniment with the reward system or point sheet that is used with this system. The study of previous research illuminated the importance of my study because it stated how student behaviors interfere with learning and how that contributes to learning disabilities or mild cognitive disabilities in students. The disruptions of these students contribute to low scores in academic levels, which highlights how valuable a behavior management system can be. Past research shows the impact of token economy systems. A study was performed by several researchers, which was performed in an elementary school lunchroom. They focused on the incorporation of a token economy system to improve lunchroom behaviors. Incidence of behaviors decreased when a token economy system was put in place. Littering decreased from 34.3 pieces to 1.3 pieces. Inappropriate sitting in the lunchroom decreased from 65.5 to 23.3. Running in the lunchroom decreased from 34 occurrences to 8.5. So as you can see, the use of the token economy system to decrease problem behaviors is a very valuable tool. The impact of guiding compliance, which is introducing replacement behaviors to students exhibiting challenging behaviors, is also valuable. There was also an increase in results when this strategy was incorporated alone. In another previous study, student 1 went from following instructions 23% of the time to 78% of the time when this strategy was incorporated. Student 2 went from following instructions 17% of the time to 86% of the time. Student 3 went from 14% of the time to 94% of the time. Student 4 went from 8% of the time to 87% of the time. Student 5 went from 4% of the time to 49% of the time, and Student 6 went from 0% of the time to 43% of the time. So as you can see, providing guided compliance, also known as replacement behavior, is beneficial for improving student behavior. As stated previously, the problem still continues to focus on how challenging behaviors interfere with student learning outcomes. There is a gap in the research that centers on the use of the token economy system paired with the corrective teaching model to improve student behavior even more than when they are used alone. The purpose of this study is to show the significance of the token economy system paired with the corrective teaching process for improving student behavior and how that reflects through student academic achievement. The hypothesis of my study was that the combination of a token economy system paired with a corrective teaching model and interactions will improve negative behaviors in students with behavior disorders, which will, in turn, improve student academic achievement. The purpose of this study is to show the significance of the token economy system with the corrective teaching process, specifically the Boys Town educational model, on improving student behavior and how that reflects in student academic achievement. The dependent variables of this study are student behavior and student academic scores on the Ames Web probes. The independent variables of this study are the token economy system and corrective teaching systems that are used. This study will impact my field of study because the results can help teachers use an effective behavior management system within their classroom. The results will show teachers how the corrective teaching model enhances the token economy system by adding a beneficial step of practicing the appropriate skill. This study will impact my position as a special education teacher because the results will allow me to see how effective the corrective teaching model is. I will be able to have reassurance that the corrective teaching process is not a waste of time, but truly is an important part of the Boys Town model. The participants of my study included 5 first-grade students who were all labeled as having challenging behaviors. They were assigned to a behavior disorder self-contained classroom. 3 of the 5 students were special education students. 4 of the students were male, and 1 of the students was a female. The participants also included the classroom teacher and paraeducator, who were both female. The classroom teacher was in her 20s, and the paraeducator was in her 60s. The materials included in this study are the Boys Town Management Daily Point Sheet. This point sheet is new to the student every single day, hence why it's titled a Daily Point Sheet. The point sheet is where the student was able to earn points for positive behaviors used or earn negatives for inappropriate behaviors seen. There were also Boys Town Management skill posters and curriculum. Each social skill has specific steps. For example, if the skill is following instructions, the steps would be to look at the person, say okay, do what you've been asked right away, and then check back if you need to. Each student also had their own student account book. The account book tracked the points each student earned daily and how much they spent if they wanted to go to the store that day. It also tracked how many referrals each student earned, if any were earned at all. A teacher record book was also used, and this tracked the amount of times negative point losses were earned. Ames Web reading fluency probes and Ames Web math computation probes were used to assess each student during both phases of the study. The procedure of my study followed an A-B research design. I chose this research design because the participants used in my study were analyzed individually because they came into the study at different times. The A-B research design would allow me to compare data between phases regardless of when the phases occurred for each participant. During phase A, also known as the baseline phase, the corrective teaching model was eliminated, but the use of the reward system was still in place. This phase lasted 2 weeks. The Ames Web reading fluency and math computation probes were administered at the beginning and end of the baseline phase. Phase B, also known as the intervention phase, incorporated the corrective teaching model with the reward system. This phase lasted the final 6 weeks of my study. The Ames Web reading fluency and math computation probes were again administered at the beginning and end of this phase. The data analysis was analyzed at the end of the 6-week intervention phase using a paired sample t-test. Behavior progress was tracked weekly using the student account book and teaching record. The probes were tracked at the beginning and end of the baseline and intervention phases. The overall findings of my study confirmed that there were higher scores on both the reading fluency probes and math computation probes after the intervention of the corrective teaching model with the token economy system. Findings also just suggest that corrective teaching and token system lowered inappropriate behavior occurrences in some of the student participants. All students showed improvement in reading and math scores. 3 out of 5 students showed improvement in behavior occurrences. As you can see by looking at the graph, the results of the behavior occurrences shown from each student is shown from each student. Student 1, 2, and 3 all improved behaviorally by lowering the amount of negative behavior occurrences. Student 4 and 5 unfortunately showed an increase in the negative behavior occurrences. The tables show the results of the behavior data that was gathered. The mean scores show an overall increase in occurrences from baseline to treatment phases. The graph here shows the scores for taking the Ames Web reading fluency probes. The probe tracked the words read per minute. All 5 students showed an increase in the amount of words read per minute when comparing the baseline phase to the intervention phase. These findings indicate a positive effect from the corrective teaching and token system. The tables show the results of the reading data that was gathered. The mean scores show an overall increase in the amount of words read from the baseline treatment phase. This graph shows the scores from taking the Ames Web Math computation probes. The probe tracked the points earned, and all 5 students showed an increase in the amount of points earned when comparing the baseline phase to the intervention phase. These findings indicate a positive effect on the corrective teaching and token system. The tables show the results of the math data that was gathered, and the mean scores show an overall increase in the amount of points earned from the baseline to treatment phase. There were 3 implications that I highlighted from my study. The first implication was that the corrective teaching strategy allows the student to perform the appropriate replacement behavior, which improves or eliminates the negative behavior that was interfering with the student learning. The second implication was that teachers will be able to teach with a more infrequent amount of disruptions from student behaviors. These behaviors will occur less often, therefore learning will be able to take place. The third implication was the carryover for parents. If the students learn and frequently use a replacement behavior at school, then there is an increased chance that they will carry this over at home, especially if the parent is proactive about how they can help use these skills at home. There are 4 limitations that may have influenced my study. The first limitation is the student turnover rate within this study may have caused for an inaccurate duration for baseline and intervention phases. It also may decrease consistency in student behavior because of the constant change in students coming in and going out. The building where the study was conducted is a transitional building, meaning students come fast and may potentially leave fast. The second limitation is the sample size. The sample size was not large enough to make results significant. With a sample size of only 5 students, the data collected most likely would not stand out enough to make a difference. The third limitation was the duration of the baseline and treatment phases. The phases were not long enough to make results effective, and the issue of the student turnover rate contributed to this limitation. The researcher had to have a shorter baseline phase of 2 weeks and extended the intervention phase to 6 weeks. This skewed the results because when the baseline phase was compared to the intervention phase, the durations did not match up, which can explain why the rates for the behavior occurrences during the intervention phase may have been higher. The last limitation is the history of exposure in students. Some of the student participants in this study were previously exposed to a token economy system and some aspects of the corrective teaching model before being sent to the classroom being studied. The recommendations for my study would all help contribute to strengthening my results. The first recommendation would be to contribute more research to strengthen the findings of my study. I will continue to look into past research about corrective teachings and token systems, as well as the usage of the two together. The second recommendation would be to use students who were not previously exposed to the corrective teaching model. Using a population with no previous exposure would strengthen my results because the intervention would be a new idea or skill that had never been used before. The third recommendation would be to use a larger sample size to find more effective and significant results. I could have used a larger sample size by combining 3 of the classrooms within the building to create a sample size of about 30 students instead of just 5. The final recommendation would be to use the student participants from a normal school setting that does not have a frequent turnover rate. Conducting my study within a normal building would allow me to work with the same students for a longer period of time, and there would not be the inconsistency in student turnover rate. Thank you for listening to my study. Here's the references that were used within my study or within my presentation.